Now left out of the Henry Review seemingly were changes to real estate taxes. Peter Iklo, CEO of Monarch Investments Group, is with me in studio. Peter, warm welcome to you. What does this all come down to when it comes to the real estate sector? It was excluded, as we've just talked about, but you're saying it's about taking a lot of these tax imposts out of the system.
One main tax impost. The levies are okay because the levies provide infrastructure. The serious impost, which is what I call a super tax on new housing, is the GST. And on the sale of a new house and land package for, say, $500,000, $50,000 goes as GST, and we do not recover that. So that's basically the profit for the developer. So there's no incentive for us to build new housing.
If it's not been addressed now, how confident are you that even, because we know we've got an election in the next perhaps 6 months, but a lot of tax reform, Peter, in fairness, is made outside of that window of time. So is it fair to say that proposals from Henry could still be taken hold of? I mean, was there anything in these Henry proposals that's got merit, let alone the government's non-response?
There's nothing in that proposal that will address the housing affordability crisis. And I can't see the government's doing anything about it because the GST flows through to the states. The GST is, without the GST, the states have no funding. So in all the people I've spoken to, it's not even on the agenda.
Would taxing the family home, in fairness, solve the housing affordability crisis you've just flagged?
No, the only way you can, in my opinion, you can solve the crisis is two ways. First of all, to give an incentive for the producer of new housing by not charging GST, and that's only charged on new housing. It's not charged on existing housing. And the other way is, can somebody please streamline the planning process? It can still take me 12 months to get a 50-block subdivision approved through council.
And you're saying there was nothing in that to streamline, to root and branch address that at all?
There was not one single thing in that report that will do anything to address the housing affordability crisis.
How much had you and other members been sort of really putting a blueprint out there? I mean, is it simply oversight from Henry's point of view? Was it just an unwillingness to take on your suggestions? How did it play out in Canberra?
I've spoken to politicians of all levels. I've been in the press, I've been in the media. I've had this message out there all the time, and I've spoken to politicians from the lowest to the highest.
And what do they say to you?
They say to me, Peter, don't even go there.
Why not?
Because they didn't introduce the GST, the previous government did, and they won't be doing anything about it. They've moved on. Housing is now being taxed almost to oblivion, new housing, and now they're moving on to look for taxes.
Because in fairness, you were telling me it's not just the GST component that's a problem, it's all those land levy taxes, it's all those approval costs that just add up. I mean, your profit margins are where at the moment?
There's no profit. If you could give me a block of land for almost nothing, and it would be very difficult just to cover our costs at the moment. 30% of the price of a new house land is tax. That leaves you 70% to buy the land, develop it, build a house and make a return. And that return, remember, can take 2 or 3 years.
Now, as a viable business proposition then, are you looking to offshore markets to kind of hedge against the likelihood that you're going to run out of land eventually here if the land bank has not been increased?
Well, having been in business for over 50 years, we have a land bank. Our land bank is a couple of thousand blocks of land. Once that is developed, we have not been able to replace it.
And once being how long on a time frame?
Oh, I'd say 5 years.
Right. And then what happens as a proposition? What do you
well, after 50 years, we'll have to leave the industry. Because all the new... We probably look at maybe 5 to 10 projects a week, and not one of them works out when you take into account the GST.
Bank funding as well, you were saying to me earlier, that is another kind of canary in the coal mine. How have you observed that attitudes have changed? Because we're still hearing stories of people being able to get financing. As a sector, are you back on the front foot again? Are banks willing to play ball?
No. There's 2 levels to the banking. The first one is the money that the developer borrows, and we can't borrow more than 60% now. We used to be able to borrow 80%. That means that we need 50% cash equity, and our cash is tied up in our land, which due to GST is very difficult to recover. The other aspect is money lent to the home buyers, and they have increased the equity that the people need. I mean, you're going to need $100,000 equity now to buy a $500,000 house. Where do people get that? Now the Reserve Bank is increasing interest rates, which makes the repayments more. So every way you look, the home buyer is hit with increased costs.
The interesting thing, though, and I was in Perth recently observing this, and we were talking about this before, that, you know, you have a swathe of large blocks of property that have been fantastically developed, but they are lying empty. Now, I mean, we're talking about two different markets. The Eastern Seaboard, which is largely apartment, driven, and rental income on that. But absentee owners, that cannot be a factor that the government can sit idly by and allow to happen ad infinitum when there's a housing shortage for the rest of the market.
Okay, the housing shortage is not in those large houses. The housing shortage is in the $500,000 house land affordable area. And those houses are not affecting that market. The affordable housing market in New South Wales has got nothing to do with large houses being built in West Australia.
No, I'm not saying that it does, but I'm just wondering how does the government arrive at a policy that addresses both those issues? It seems it's a difficult one to square, because you do have a very dynamic market here at play. It's not an identical one across the country.
Well, I don't have a problem if they address that issue, but they also have to address our issue at the same time. And addressing the issue of large houses is not helping us. Address that issue any which way they want, but make sure that whatever they do does not impact on the supply of affordable housing and apartments for purchase and rental for
As a number one thing, what needs to change? Briefly, finally.
Okay, what needs to change is they need to stop charging GST on new house and land packages and land. If they want the GST, do what the Henry suggested with land tax, spread it.
Right.
Don't just have it on new houses, have it on all houses so it makes it competitive.
Stamp duty, view on that?
Stamp duty, once again, that will help the people to pay less. But if they take stamp duty off, I can guarantee you they'll put it on somewhere else, and it's going to end up on the cost of making a new house.
And it doesn't sound like you're going to score this one very highly at all, Peter, on reflection out of 10. The government response being how much?
Well, out of 10 for housing, I'd say less than 1.
Honest appraisal. Do appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Many thanks.